If you spend the past year confused about whether AI is about to replace you or can get through a basic task without hallucinating or actually costs more money than you with all your taken PTO, congratulations, you've been paying attention. And nobody captures that confusion better than people building these systems. In 2025, Anthropic's CEO said AI could eliminate half of all entry level white collar jobs. This May OpenAI CEO said he's delighted to be wrong. He expected more impact on entry level jobs by now. Two leading AI CEOs, 12 months apart, both companies now prepping trillion-dollar IPOs. The predictions track the funding round, not the data. And while everyone's arguing about whether AI is really replacing jobs, the damage is structural. It's quiet and is happening on a timescale the news cycle can't see. Hi, I'm Kate, attorney and certified privacy professional. Welcome back to Sunshine&Side-AIs. Quick disclaimer: this is for educational purposes only, not legal or financial advice. I'm sharing research, not giving counsel. So let's start with the headline everyone's been reading: AI layoffs are accelerating. And this time, the headline has numbers behind it. Challenger Grain Christmas, they track employer job cut announcements, reports that AI is now the number one cited reason for job cuts in 2026. Through May, companies cited AI in roughly 87,700 cuts, 22% of all layoffs this year. In May alone, AI accounted for 40% of announced cuts. That's up from 7% in January. That's a steep acceleration, and it would be alarming, except for one thing. The Census Bureau surveyed firms directly, including those using AI. Two-thirds of those users rely on AI solely to augment what their workers already do. How many reported actually reducing their workforce because of AI? 2%. Important timing note though, the Challenger numbers run through May 2026. The census survey only covers through January 2026, before the steepest part of that acceleration. So it will be genuinely interesting to see whether updated census data shows more companies actually cutting workers because of AI, or whether the gap holds. But as of right now, companies are citing AI in 22% of layoff announcements, while 2% report actually cutting jobs because of it. That's not a contradiction, it's a framing incentive. Why is the AI layoff framing so attractive? Because if a company cut jobs while spending billions on AI infrastructure, AI is transforming how we work. Sounds a lot better on an earnings call than we are restructuring again. The math makes it obvious. Meta's 2026 capex guidance is about $125 to $145 billion. Its total costs and expenses for all of last year, the entire cost of running the company, were about $118 billion. Meta's capital expenditure guidance for this year alone is higher than its entire cost based in 2025. Firing every single person at Meta wouldn't pay for 1 year of it. The layoffs aren't funding AI efficiency, they are partially financing the construction project. And then there's Amazon. Roughly 30,000 corporate roles cut across two rounds, October and January, while AWS revenue grew 24 to 28%. And Amazon can't quite keep its story straight. The company spent 2025 telling everyone AI would shrink its workforce. Then, when the 14,000 October cuts actually landed, CEO Andy Jassy said they were not even really AI driven. It's culture, he said. The layoff memo cited removing bureaucracy. When a company shuts jobs while that same cloud business is accelerating, you're not watching a robot replace a worker, you're watching a budget line move. And just as the AI is replacing everyone narrative hit a wall, the conversation flipped. Now the headlines say AI is too expensive. The ROI isn't there. We went from token maxing to token efficiency in about 4 months. The vibe shift fast. Same shape, opposite vibe, still a 12-month argument. I'm not chasing that one either, because whether AI costs too much today or gets cheaper tomorrow doesn't change what's already showing up in the data. And it's not in the layoff numbers. So if the layoff numbers don't tell the real story, what does? Two separate research teams stopped counting headlines and started looking at who's actually getting hired. What they found isn't in any layoff announcement. And a third analysis helps explain why the signal is so easy to miss. Stanford's Digital Economy Lab analyzed payroll records from ADP, the payroll provider for over 25 million US workers, actual administrative payroll data. What they found, workers aged 22 to 25 in the occupations most exposed to AI, so a 16% relative employment decline once you control for firm level shocks. In raw terms, their employment fell 6% since late 2022, while older workers in the very same occupations kept growing. Software developers in that age group down nearly 20% from their late 2022 peak. And here's the detail that connects everything we just covered. The authors argue this is likely about reduced hiring, not increased firing. Firms shrinking junior inflows rather than pushing people out. If that's right, companies aren't laying off 22-year-olds, they're just not bringing them in, which is why a decline like this never shows up in a single layoff headline. Older workers in the exact same occupations, stable, same jobs, same AI exposure. Different outcomes depending on whether you're already in the door or still trying to get through it. Then a separate team at Anthropic Research ran their own analysis. Different data, different methodology. Census current population survey matched with ONET task classifications. A similar signal, a 14% drop in the job finding rate for 22 to 25-year-olds in AI exposed occupations. No such decrease for workers over 25. Now, you might expect the aggregate employment data to reflect this. It doesn't. The Yale Budget Lab, using one of the cleanest causal methodologies in the literature, looked at the big picture as of May 2026, and their title tells you everything. AI is probably not yet the reason for labor market weakening. At the aggregate level, AI exposure doesn't show a clear effect on employment or wages. That sounds reassuring, but the aggregate count is not rebuttal. The aggregate count is the point. If the damage is concentrated in a narrow slice of the labor market, young workers in exposed occupations at the entry point, then the headline numbers can look calm while the career ladder quietly loses its bottom runs. Quick note, these are research papers and dry statistics, and the reality on the ground is messier than any dataset. The tech layoffs of the past 2 years hit senior engineers, mid-career managers, people with 15 years of experience, many of them now months into brutal job search. For anyone watching who is in that position, whether your job was cut because of AI or because a CEO decided to maximize shareholder value, that distinction is irrelevant to you day to day. You are still looking. The research hasn't caught up to that reality yet. These are working papers, not yet peer reviewed. The Anthropic research finding is, in their own words, just barely statistically significant. But when separate analyses using different data point in the same direction, and the aggregate data explains why nobody noticed, that's not noise. That's a signal the layoff debate will never see, because it's not about who's getting fired, it's about who's not getting started. So the on ramp is narrowing, but that's only half the problem. Something else is happening at the same time to the people who are using AI every day. A peer reviewed study out of Microsoft Research and Carnegie Mellon, published in 2025, surveyed 319 knowledge workers who use generative AI at least weekly. What they found, the more confidence workers had in the AI's ability to do the task, the less critical thinking they reported applying. They're not slacking, they're handing the thinking itself over to the tool. The researchers described a shift from material production to critical integration. In plain language, workers stop making things and start managing AI output. They go from doing the work to reviewing the work, which sounds efficient until you ask where the judgment to review well actually comes from. Now, hold both findings side by side. This is where the two threads come together, and this is the nuance that underplayed in the current discussions. On one side, you have entry level workers who aren't getting hired, the junior roles where people historically learn the work. Those are the first roles AI can handle, and companies are feeling fewer of them. On the other side, you have current workers, the people already inside the building, who are offloading more of the substantive thinking to AI. Not because they're lazy, because the tools are good enough to make that feel rational in the moment. Both of these are happening simultaneously, and they compound. Think about any profession you know. A junior lawyer doesn't start by arguing before an appellate court. They start by reviewing documents, drafting basic memos, making the small mistakes that teach them how the law actually works in practice. A junior developer doesn't start by architecting systems. They start by fixing bugs, reading other people's code, doing the repetitive work that teaches them how production software actually behaves. Junior people don't come with building expertise. They're learning on the job. That's not inefficiency, that's apprenticeship. That's how expertise has always been built. AI is now doing pieces of that work. And the result is that we're asking people to be editors before they've learned how to write, asking people to verify analysis before they've learned how to analyze, asking people to supervise judgment before they've had enough chances to build it. Follow that forward 10 years. The supply of people who actually know how to do things well doesn't just shrink, it starts to collapse. And the AI still cannot do the high judgment work that only comes from years of doing the low judgment work first. The exceptions still need a human, but we're eliminating the process that produces humans who can handle them. We're optimizing for a short term efficiency gain by quietly dismantling the apprenticeship system that produced every expert currently doing the work AI can replicate. That's not a layoff story. It's not a quarterly earnings story. It's a 10-year structural story, and it is invisible at every time scale the current conversation operates on. I spent the first part of this video showing you what perceived AI displacement looks like. Let me show you what the real thing looks like, because it exists. And it looks nothing like what you would expect. Chegg was an education technology company. Homework help, tutoring, study tools. Then generative AI happened, and students stopped paying for Chegg. Not because the company failed, because free AI tools now do the same thing. Here's the important part: AI didn't replace Chegg's workers, AI replaced Chegg's product. Nobody inside that company lost their job to a robot doing their job. They lost their jobs because the entire business was built on something AI can now do. And once the customers left, the jobs went with them. In October of 2025, Chegg cut another 388 people, 45% of its remaining workforce. And this is worth naming clearly because AI replacement isn't just one thing. Cars didn't replace stable hands by grooming horses faster. Cars replaced the horses. AI is doing both task level replacement and industry level disruption. And the conversation is almost entirely focused on the first one. Now, the usual response to everything I've just laid out is, but AI will create new jobs. It always does. That's a historically reasonable thing to say. It also may not be true anymore. Order and colleagues published a study in 2024, one of the most rigorous historical studies of how new work emerges from technology. Looked at 8 decades of data. What they found, the demand destroying effects of automation have intensified since 1980. The demand creating effects of augmentation have not. The historical offset is weakening. Not gone, weakening. And nothing in the research I reviewed shows AI reversing that trend yet. And here's a simple test: name a new job that AI created. Not a job that uses AI, a job that exists because of AI. Prompt engineer? That was the poster child 2 years ago and it's already fading. AI governance? Real, but a niche. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics doesn't even have separate occupation codes for AI engineer, machine learning engineer, or AI safety as of 2026. Those roles get folded into broader categories like software developers, data scientists, or computer occupations not listed separately. Whatever new roles are emerging, none has even become a recognized occupation yet, let alone at the scale that AI will create new jobs promises. So, AI will create new jobs may be true eventually, but eventually is not a workforce strategy. And it doesn't answer the pipeline problem happening right now. Every layoff headline will keep arguing about whether AI is really replacing jobs. That question is too small. What the research points to is a different question entirely. Whether the system that produces the people who do the high judgment work, the apprenticeship, the entry level pipeline, the years of messy practice that build expertise, whether that system survives the efficiency optimization. That's the question worth tracking, and it doesn't fit in a news cycle. If you want AI coverage that reads the actual studies instead of the headlines and brings a healthy level of suspicion about who's selling what, subscribe to Sunshine&Side-AIs. Next month, we're looking at what AI web search toggles are doing with your data while you are busy crafting your most optimal prompt. Everyone is watching who AI pushes out. The biggest story is who never gets trained to step in.